The wounded human. The battle outside had finally ended. Smoke rose from the broken metal streets of Outpost Delta 5. The sky, once bright with 2 suns, was now covered in thick, dark clouds. Bodies of different species lay scattered, but a few survivors were pulled from the wreckage. Inside the medical bay, Nurse Valira moved quickly. Her soft blue skin glowed under the sterile white lights. Her silver hair was tied neatly behind her pointed ears. She was young for a nurse, but she had a strong heart. Today was her first time treating a human. Valira's hands trembled slightly as she stood beside the bed. On it lay a human male, strong, muscular, but wounded badly. His name, written in strange letters on his ID chip, was Connor Vance. Valira whispered to herself, "Humans, they are tougher than they look." Connor's chest rose and fell heavily. His armor was ripped open, showing bruised skin and bleeding cuts. Strange red blood, so different from her own silver blood, stained the sheets. Valira activated the scanner, passing it carefully over his body. Broken ribs, fractured leg, internal bleeding. She noted each injury on her data pad. She worked carefully, spraying healing mist over the wounds, sealing cuts with glowing biogel. Everything seemed normal, until her scanner beeped in alarm. Valira's brow furrowed. She moved the scanner lower. Her eyes widened in shock. Between Connor's legs, something was happening. Something unexpected. The scanner flashed warnings. "Rapid tissue expansion detected." Valira gasped. She had never seen this before. Was it an infection? Some kind of dangerous swelling? Was he about to explode? Her heart raced. She tapped her communicator, calling for senior healers, but no one answered. The battle had overloaded all systems. The station was in partial lockdown. "I must act quickly," Valira said to herself, fear creeping into her voice. She grabbed a cooling spray and pointed it at the growing area. Hiss! The cold mist hit his skin, but instead of shrinking, the swelling seemed to grow harder. Valira stepped back, nearly dropping the bottle. This is serious," she said, panic rising inside her. Connor let out a soft groan, shifting slightly on the bed. Valira thought he was in pain. She rushed to grab another tool, a vibrating stimulator used to break up dangerous tissue clots. She pressed it gently against the area. Connor's back arched slightly, a soft smile forming on his lips. Valira's confusion deepened. Why is he smiling? She thought. Is the infection affecting his mind too? She checked his heart rate, strong but fast. His oxygen levels, perfect. His body temperature, rising. Valira chewed her lip nervously. "Come on, think. What did the textbook say about human anatomy?" she whispered. She pulled up the digital medical book, flipping through emergency chapters. There were injuries, diseases, parasites, but no mention of this strange reaction. Her blue cheek started to glow with embarrassment. She didn't know what was happening, only that it looked very, very wrong. Connor's eyes fluttered open for a moment. His voice was hoarse but playful. "Nurse, you're working too hard. Down there," he whispered. Valira blinked, her mind racing. Was he joking? Even in this state? "Stay still. You are experiencing severe inflammation," Valira said, trying to stay professional. Connor chuckled weakly, sending a small ripple of warmth through her chest. "Not inflammation," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's something else." Valira frowned. "Something else? What do you mean?" But Connor's eyes closed again, his body sinking into restful sleep, leaving Valira more confused than ever. The medical scanner beeped again, but this time the warnings were softer. No danger detected, no bleeding, no damage, just unusual, human biological response. Valira stared at the sleeping man, her heart pounding. She had been trained for years in alien medicine. She had treated broken bones, missing limbs, venom poisoning, but she had never faced anything like this. She sat down heavily on the stool beside his bed, covering her burning face with her hands. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered. As she sat there, the doors of the medical bay hissed shut behind her, locking automatically due to station lockdown. She was now alone with him. No escape. No help. Only her, a wounded human, and a growing mystery between his legs that she had no idea how to fix. Emergency protocols. Valira sat frozen for a long moment, staring at the unconscious human. Every part of her training told her to stay calm, but nothing in her books had prepared her for this. She gripped the edge of the stool tightly, trying to think. "This is a critical situation," she said to herself, taking deep breaths. But not like any emergency I have ever seen. Connor stirred slightly on the bed, mumbling something under his breath. Valira leaned closer, hoping for a clue, but it was only soft, incoherent sounds. His face, however, was peaceful, relaxed, not like someone in pain or danger. Still, the medical scanner kept flashing a soft warning. Unusual human reaction. No life-threatening danger detected. Monitor closely. Valira stood up quickly, deciding to call for backup one more time. She slapped the communicator panel on the wall. "Medical bay to command. I request immediate assistance," she said, her voice sharp with urgency. The communicator crackled back, but all she heard was static and broken voices. "Systems failing. Lockdown in progress. Stay at your stations." The screen blinked off, leaving her alone again in silence. Valira cursed under her breath, a very unprofessional habit she had picked up from her human friends. "Fine. No help is coming. I must handle this myself." She turned back to Connor and made a decision. Activate Emergency Protocol 9, used only when alien biology was unknown or uncontrollable. The protocol suggested 3 steps. Isolate the affected area, apply extreme cooling, monitor for explosive reactions. Valira nodded to herself, pulled on a fresh pair of sterile gloves, and grabbed the largest cooling unit she could find. "This might hurt," she warned softly, even though Connor was barely awake. She set the cooling machine to maximum and pointed the nozzle at the inflamed area. A blast of freezing mist exploded out, surrounding the lower half of his body in white fog. The temperature in the room dropped sharply. Valira shivered, rubbing her arms as she watched. For a few seconds, the strange growth seemed to shrink. She allowed herself a small smile. Maybe this is working. But then, horrifyingly, the scanner started flashing again, louder than before. "Tissue hardening detected, heart rate increasing, possible chemical release imminent." Valira gasped. Chemical release? Explosion? Had she triggered something worse? Panic surged through her chest. She dove behind a nearby table, covering her head with her arms like the training videos had taught. If he explodes, the whole bay could be destroyed. Seconds ticked by. Nothing exploded. Slowly, Valira peeked over the edge of the table. Connor was still lying peacefully on the bed, a soft smile tugging at his lips even in his sleep. Valira's cheeks turned bright purple with embarrassment. "What in the twin moons is happening to you?" she whispered. She crawled back to the bed, checking the scanner again. This time the screen said, "No danger. Condition. Natural biological response." Valira blinked, confused. Natural? Biological? Response to what? She checked the footnotes in the medical book quickly. Buried deep in a forgotten section labeled Rare Cross-Species Reactions, she found a small entry. Humans may experience involuntary physical reactions in the presence of individuals they find attractive. Warning: this is not considered a medical emergency. Proceed with cultural sensitivity. Valira dropped the scanner in shock. Attractive? He finds me attractive? Her whole body warmed with confusion, horror, and something she couldn't name. Was this swelling not a sickness, not an injury, but a sign of attraction? Valira stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of medical tools with a loud crash. Metal instruments clattered across the floor, the noise echoing through the silent room. Connor stirred again, this time opening his eyes halfway. "You're making a lot of noise, nurse," he mumbled with a tired smile. Valira's mouth opened and closed, like a fish, no words coming out. "Don't worry," Connor said, his voice rough but teasing. "It's just human biology. Happens sometimes, when we're near someone beautiful." He drifted off again, leaving Valira standing there, frozen. Beautiful. He thought she was beautiful. Valira pressed her hands against her burning cheeks. Her mind raced in every direction at once. Professional duty said, "Stay calm, stay focused." Her heart whispered, "He thinks you're beautiful." The room seemed very small suddenly, very warm, very dangerous, but not because of injuries. Valira shook her head violently, trying to clear it. "No," she told herself. "This is highly unprofessional. I must control the situation." She turned away quickly, busying herself by adjusting medical machines, pretending not to notice the soft smile still on Connor's sleeping face. As she cleaned the bay, she kept glancing at him from the corner of her eye. Every time she looked, a strange flutter danced inside her chest. Valira knew one thing for certain now. This was no longer a normal medical case. This was something far, far more complicated. And as the station's lockdown sirens echoed softly, in the background Valira realized she was trapped here, trapped alone, with him, and with feelings that no scanner could ever fix. The embarrassing realization. The medical bay was silent except for the soft humming of machines and the occasional crackle of the damaged station's speakers. Valira wiped her forehead, trying to calm the strange storm building inside her. She refused to look at Connor directly again. "Focus, Valira, focus," she scolded herself. But no matter how much she tried, her mind kept flashing back to the scanner's last message. Natural biological response due to attraction. Every time she remembered it, her cheeks burned hotter. She stood by the medicine, shelves pretending to be busy. She rearranged bottles that didn't need arranging. She polished a clean table. She even cleaned the already spotless scanner again. Still, her eyes kept pulling back to him. The human with messy brown hair, strong jawline, and peaceful smile. He looked so relaxed, so warm, so different from the cold, disciplined soldiers she usually treated. And the worst part? She could feel her own body reacting in ways she didn't understand. Her heart beat faster, her palms felt sweaty. She swallowed hard. Was this some kind of infection? Some cross-species disease? Panicking, Valira rushed to her personal datapad. She quickly opened the Emergency Medical Encyclopedia app. Her fingers flew over the screen as she typed. Symptoms: racing heart, warm cheeks, sweaty palms, strange thoughts about patient. The AI assistant beeped and replied instantly. Diagnosis: early signs of infatuation. Suggested treatment: emotional control. Avoid close physical contact. Valira dropped the datapad with a loud clatter. Infatuation? She squeaked aloud, horrified. The sound woke Connor slightly. He stirred, eyes half opening with a sleepy grin. You okay over there, nurse? He murmured. Valira stiffened like a soldier caught sneaking sweets during training. I am fine, she said too loudly, her voice cracking embarrassingly. Connor chuckled lowly, sending a strange shiver down Valira's spine. This is a disaster, she thought miserably. Trying to salvage some professionalism, she decided to check his vitals again. It was routine. It was safe. No danger in that. She grabbed her scanner and carefully walked back to his bedside, keeping her face as emotionless as possible. She waved the device over him, chest, arms, leg, until she hesitated again at the problem area. She squeezed her eyes shut, face burning, and passed the scanner quickly. Beep, beep. Normal, stable, healthy. Valira opened one eye cautiously. Connor, meanwhile, watched her with deep amusement. His lips curled into a lazy, teasing smile. "You're very dedicated to your work," he said, voice playful. Valira nearly dropped the scanner again. She turned her back to him quickly, pretending to check the medicine cabinet. Inside, she was screaming, "He knows. He knows what's happening, and he's laughing at me." Just then, the room's main door rattled. Valira jumped in surprise, hope flaring in her chest. Maybe help had finally arrived. Maybe she could escape this embarrassing nightmare. She rushed to the door and pressed the control panel, but the screen flashed a cruel message. "Lockdown continues. All access denied. Estimated time to release 6 hours." Valira's heart sank to her knees. 6 more hours? 6 more hours alone? With him? She turned slowly, her back pressing against the cold metal door. Connor was watching her still, but not with teasing anymore. His eyes had softened. He looked kind, understanding. Valira's breath caught. She had been so busy panicking she hadn't noticed how gentle he really was. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't laughing cruelly. He was simply being human. Connor patted the empty chair beside his bed. "You can sit, you know. I don't bite," he said, winking. Valira hesitated. Her training screamed against it. Her heart whispered, "Sit. Talk. Understand him." Finally, she walked stiffly to the chair and sat down, as far on the edge as possible, like she was ready to sprint away at any moment. For a few moments, silence stretched between them, heavy and awkward. Then Connor spoke, voice low and honest. "Thank you for taking care of me," he said. "In the middle of a war when everyone else ran, you stayed." Valira blinked, surprised. No one had ever thanked her like that before. "Not truly. I was just doing my duty," she said, voice small. Connor chuckled. "Maybe, but you could have ignored the alarms. You could have left me lying there." Valira looked down at her hands, unsure what to say. For a moment she forgot the inflammation incident, forgot her embarrassment, forgot the rules. All she saw was a brave man broken by war, trusting her, a stranger from another world, with his life. And somehow, that trust warmed her more than any praise she had ever received. Slowly, carefully, Valira relaxed into the chair, her body easing from its tight knot of nerves. Connor smiled, truly smiled this time, and closed his eyes again. The lights in the medical bay dimmed automatically, signaling the night cycle. Valira sat quietly beside him, feeling strangely at peace. Yet deep inside she knew one thing. This was no simple patient-nurse relationship anymore. Something new, something dangerous, had been born between them, something that would change both their lives forever. And as Valira glanced at the scanner's last note, patient experiencing emotional stability boost due to caregiver presence, she realized something else. Too, maybe the real emergency, was happening inside her own heart. Crossed wires and beating hearts. The medical bay had grown quiet again, the soft hum of life support machines filling the background. Valira sat in the chair, frozen between two worlds, her duty as a healer and the wild, confusing emotions spinning inside her. Connor slept peacefully on the bed, his chest rising and falling with a calm rhythm. Yet Valira's own heart was anything but calm. She had spent years mastering alien medicine, learning how to heal broken bodies, but no one had ever taught her how to heal her own trembling heart. She told herself to look away, to focus on the charts and readings, but her eyes kept returning to him. His face looked even softer in the dim light. The tough lines of a soldier melted away into something vulnerable, something beautiful. Valira wrapped her arms around herself, feeling strangely cold. "Why is my chest hurting?" she thought miserably. "Why do I want to touch his hand? Just to make sure he's real?" She shook her head fiercely. No. She couldn't let herself fall into foolishness. She was an alien. He was human. Their worlds were too different. Still, her gaze dropped to his hand resting near the edge of the bed. Big, strong, with faint scars tracing the skin. Without thinking, without planning, her hand moved slightly toward his. Just as her fingers were about to brush his skin, Connor's hand twitched and grabbed hers. Valira gasped, her entire body jolting. His fingers closed gently around hers, warm and secure. Even half asleep, he didn't let go. It wasn't a forceful grip, it was comforting, protective. Valira stared at their joined hands in shock. Her brain screamed at her to pull away. Her training, her fear, her pride, everything demanded she move. But her heart stayed stubbornly still. Connor's voice broke the silence, low and sleepy. "Stay. Just for a little while," he murmured. Valira's throat tightened. She couldn't speak. She couldn't move. She could only sit there, letting the human's warmth seep into her cold fingers. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Time lost meaning. For the first time in her life, Valira wasn't thinking about protocols, ranks, or alien laws. She was just feeling. But deep inside, fear still lurked. What if this was wrong? What if touching him changed something she couldn't undo? Her mind raced, remembering the old stories, forbidden bonds between different species, bonds that led to exile or worse. She tried to pull her hand back gently, but Connor, even asleep, frowned slightly, his fingers tightening around hers protectively like he was afraid she would vanish. Valira's heart cracked a little at that simple, unconscious gesture. He's alone too, she realized. Just like me. The station speakers crackled suddenly, breaking her fragile moment. A cold, mechanical voice echoed through the bay. "Warning. Unknown biological link detected. Monitoring. Valira's heart skipped a beat. Biological link? She snatched her hand back quickly, staring in horror at the scanner. On the small screen, new readings flashed. Subject A, elevated oxytocin levels. Subject B, elevated oxytocin levels. Preliminary bond detected. Valira stood up so fast that the chair fell backward with a loud bang. A bond? Between them? No, Valira whispered, panic rising in her chest. Bonds were rare, almost mythical. A biological bond meant that two beings, no matter their species, had connected on a deep, emotional, even physical level. It was nearly impossible to break, and once formed, the bond would change them forever. Valira stumbled backward, hitting the medicine cabinet behind her. This was not supposed to happen. I was just helping him. I didn't mean... Connor stirred at the noise, blinking open his sleepy eyes. "Nurse." "Valira," he said, voice rough from sleep. "You okay?" Valira looked at him. Really looked. His tired, worried face, his vulnerable, open eyes, the way he reached out slightly, as if afraid she would disappear. In that moment, Valira realized something terrible and beautiful. The bond wasn't an accident. It wasn't a mistake. It was already there, hidden, waiting, just needing a spark. And now, it had begun. Valira backed toward the door, shaking her head. I need air," she stammered. Without waiting, she ran to the small maintenance exit, punching in the emergency code. The door hissed open, and she slipped into the dark, narrow hallway beyond. Her footsteps echoed as she hurried down the corridor, away from the medical bay, away from Connor, and away from the terrifying, wonderful truth growing inside her. Meanwhile, back in the bay, Connor sat up slowly, confusion on his face. He looked down at his empty hand, feeling the cold absence of hers. He didn't fully understand what had happened. He only knew one thing. When she was near, he felt strong. When she touched him, he healed faster. And when she left, something inside him ached terribly. Connor clenched his fists, staring at the door she had vanished through. He didn't know the word for what was happening between them. But deep inside, he swore silently, "No matter what, I will find her again, even if it meant breaking every law in the galaxy." A strange healing Valira stumbled through the dark corridors of the space station, her breathing uneven. Her mind raced faster than her feet. She had treated hundreds of patients before. Broken bones, torn muscles, poisoned blood. But she had never treated a broken heart. Especially not her own. The soft glow of emergency lights painted the walls in ghostly blue. Every step echoed, loud and lonely. Valira found an empty maintenance room and slipped inside, leaning heavily against the door. She pressed her forehead against the cold metal. Why did I let this happen? She thought bitterly. Why did I touch him? She looked down at her trembling hands. The memory of his warm fingers wrapped around hers still burning on her skin. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. She wasn't just a healer now. She was connected to him. Body, mind, spirit. And if the bond grew stronger, there would be no way back. Valira squeezed her eyes shut, trying to block out the feelings. But it was impossible. She could feel him, even now. His emotions, faint but real, brushing against her mind like a soft, invisible thread. Loneliness, pain, longing. Her breath caught. He was awake. He was searching for her. Valira's fists tightened. Part of her wanted to run back, to hold his hand again, to tell him he wasn't alone. But another part, the fearful, logical part, screamed that it was dangerous. An alien bond was forbidden. It could destroy her career, her future, her entire life. She slid down to the floor, hugging her knees to her chest. Stay strong, she whispered to herself. Stay away. But even as she sat there, the connection between them pulsed gently, like a heartbeat in her mind. Meanwhile, back in the IR, medical bay, Connor was sitting upright now. His injuries were healing at an unnatural speed. He could feel strength returning to his limbs. Pain was fading, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the empty chair beside his bed, and the cold absence of Valira. He ran a hand through his messy brown hair, frustration boiling inside him. Why did she run? He muttered. He remembered, her wide, scared eyes, her trembling hands. Something had happened between them, something bigger than either of them understood. Connor pushed off the bed slowly, wincing as his half-healed leg protested. He grabbed a crutch from the wall and forced himself to stand. He wasn't going to lie in bed and do nothing, not when she was hurting. Step by painful step, he made his way toward the door. The station was still on lockdown, but there were maintenance, passages. Old soldiers like him always found ways around rules. I'm coming, Valira, he whispered. I'm not letting you face this alone. In the maintenance room, Valira was lost in her battle with herself. She remembered the words of her old mentor, Healer Reiner. The body can heal itself, but the heart needs another heart. Valira bit her lip hard, trying to ignore the truth. But the bond between her and Connor wasn't weakening. It was growing stronger with every minute they stayed apart. Finally, she stood up, shoulders stiff with decision. I'll just check on him, she told herself. One last time. Then I'll leave. I'll find a way to break the bond later. She opened the maintenance door quietly and stepped into the hallway, and almost collided straight into Connor. They both froze, inches apart. Connor was leaning heavily on the crutch, his face pale but determined. His green eyes locked onto hers, filled with something raw and vulnerable. Valira gasped, stepping back instinctively. You shouldn't be walking, she said quickly, trying to hide her panic. Connor smiled faintly. I'm not good at waiting. They stared at each other in heavy silence. Valira felt the bond between them thrumming stronger now, alive and impossible to deny. She could feel his emotions, his fear, his stubborn hope, as clearly as her own. You should rest, Valira said weakly, her voice shaking. Connor shook his head. I can't rest. Not when you're hurting. Valira's throat closed up. She wanted to deny it. Pretend she was fine. But the truth was there in her trembling hands, in her aching chest. I didn't mean for this to happen. she whispered. Connor stepped closer, carefully. Neither did I, he said. But sometimes, things happen for a reason. Valira looked up at him, her blue eyes shining with unshed tears. I'm afraid, she admitted, voice cracking. Connor smiled, not mockingly, but warmly. Me too, he said softly, and somehow, hearing that made it all a little easier to bear. Slowly, carefully, Connor reached out his hand, palm open, waiting. Valira stared at it for a long, trembling moment. Then, with a shaky breath, she placed her hand into his. The moment their skin touched, the bond surged. It was like a second heartbeat joining hers. Warmth, light, strength. Connor squeezed her hand gently, grounding her. You're not alone anymore, he said, voice deep with emotion. Valira's tears finally fell, but she smiled through them. Neither of them knew what would happen next. The station was still broken. The war was still raging outside. But for this moment in the middle of chaos, two hearts had found each other, and no scanner, no rules, no fear could ever break what had started between them. Forbidden connection. The station's emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long, broken shadows. Across the metal floors, somewhere far away, the hum of damaged engines echoed through the empty corridors. But inside that small maintenance hallway, the world had shrunk down to just two people, Valira and Connor, standing hand in hand. Valira could feel Connor's heartbeat through their joined palms, steady, strong. It was like an anchor pulling her back from the edge of fear. But fear still lingered, coiled deep inside her. Her mind screamed warnings. This bond is illegal. This bond is dangerous. This bond could destroy us both. Valira pulled her hand away slowly, breaking their contact. The loss of warmth hit her like a slap. Connor frowned, confused. What's wrong? He asked softly. Valira stepped back, hugging herself tightly. Her silver hair shimmered under the flickering lights, framing her face like a broken halo. You don't understand, she whispered. In my world, bonding with another species is forbidden. It's seen as unnatural. Connor's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. And what about your heart? Is that forbidden too? Valira's chest ached painfully at his words. I have duties, she said, voice trembling. Expectations. If they find out, they'll exile me, strip me of my healer's oath. I'll be nothing. Connor leaned heavily on his crutch, but his voice was steady, fierce. And if you walk away now, what will you be? Valira opened her mouth to answer, but no words came. Because deep inside, she knew the truth. If she left, she would survive. But she would be hollow, empty. The bond had already rooted itself deep inside her soul. She couldn't cut it out without losing herself. A sudden loud clang echoed from the far end of the corridor, snapping them both out of their trance. Valira's head whipped around, ears twitching. Heavy footsteps, armored boots were approaching fast, security patrols. They must have been repairing parts of the station, and now they were coming this way. Valira's heart slammed against her ribs. If they found her and Connor like this, alone, bonded, questions would be asked, reports would be filed, punishments would follow. Panic gripped her. Connor saw the terror flashing across her face. He didn't need an explanation. Without hesitation, he grabbed her hand again. Come on, he said urgently. He pulled her into a side tunnel, just as the heavy metal doors at the end of the hall hissed open. Valira stumbled after him, barely able to keep up with his limping steps. The passage they entered was narrow and half-collapsed, lit only by weak red emergency strips along the walls. They squeezed through broken panels and ducked under hanging wires, their breathing loud in the silence. Finally, Connor found a small maintenance closet and shoved the door open. He pulled Valira inside and closed it quietly behind them. Darkness swallowed them. Valira pressed her back against the cold metal wall, struggling to breathe silently. Outside, heavy footsteps marched, past fading slowly into the distance. They were safe. For now. Inside the cramped closet, space was tight. Too tight. Valira could feel Connor's body just inches from hers, radiating heat and strength. She tried to stay calm, but the bond between them pulsed stronger in the darkness. Her senses sharpened, the sound of his heartbeat, the soft rise and fall of his chest, the faint scent of him. It all filled her mind until it was impossible to think of anything else. Connor's voice broke the silence, low and rough. Valira, are you scared of me? The question caught her off guard. She shook her head quickly. No, she whispered. I'm scared of myself. Connor shifted closer, his voice softer now. You don't have to be. Valira's hands clenched into fists at her sides. You don't understand. If we bond completely, there's no going back. Not ever. Connor reached out, brushing a stray silver strand of hair from her face. His touch was feather-light, respectful, careful, but it set off a chain reaction inside her. A small, broken sound escaped her lips before she could stop it. Connor smiled sadly. I don't want you to change who you are, he said. I just want to be the one who stands beside you, if you'll let me. Valira felt tears sting her eyes again. No one had ever said words like that to her before. Not her teachers, not her commanders, not anyone. Only this stubborn, reckless, wounded human. Slowly, carefully, Valira reached up and touched his cheek, with trembling fingers. Connor closed his eyes at the contact, leaning into her touch without hesitation. It was a simple gesture, small, gentle, but it shattered the last wall inside her. With a soft, choked cry, Valira leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. Their breaths mingled in the tiny space between them. Their bond flared brighter than ever, flooding her with emotions she could barely handle. Warmth, hope, fear, longing, love. Connor opened his eyes slowly, meeting hers. I'm not asking you to choose, he whispered. I'm just asking you not to run away. Valira closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't know how to stay, she admitted brokenly. Connor smiled gently. Then we'll figure it out, together. For a long moment they stood there in the darkness, two broken souls finding something whole in each other. Outside, the station trembled slightly as power flickered through the damaged systems. New alarms echoed faintly in the distance. But inside that small maintenance closet, Valira and Connor stayed locked together, a forbidden connection growing stronger with every beat of their hearts. Neither knew what the future would bring. But one thing was certain. They had already crossed the line. There was no going back. And deep inside, both of them realized they didn't want to. New Horizons hours passed. Inside the cramped maintenance closet, Valira and Connor remained close, their bond humming quietly like a second heartbeat. Neither spoke for a long time. Words felt too small for what they had found, and too dangerous for what waited outside, but reality could not be escaped forever. The station's main alarms blared suddenly, a harsh siren tearing through the silence. Valira tensed instantly, her body snapping back to training mode. Connor steadied her with a gentle squeeze of her hand. Through the metal walls, a robotic voice echoed, "Lockdown ending. All personnel report for inspection. Unauthorized activities will be penalized." Valira's heart dropped. Inspection. It meant scanners. It meant full medical sweeps. And the bond, the forbidden biological link between her and Connor, would be exposed immediately. She looked at Connor, panic rising in her chest. "We have to go," she whispered. "If they scan us together, they'll know." Connor nodded grimly. "Then we run." Valira bit her lip, torn. She had spent her whole life following rules, obeying laws, respecting ancient traditions. running from authority, went against everything she had been taught. But when she looked into Connor's eyes, full of trust, full of hope, she knew some rules were meant to be broken. They slipped out of the maintenance closet, sticking to the shadows. The station's corridors buzzed with life again. Repair teams, soldiers, medics, all moving quickly, preparing for full system recovery. Valira led Connor through forgotten maintenance tunnels and old air ducts, using her deep knowledge of the station's secret paths. They moved fast, hearts pounding in their ears. One wrong turn, one security scan, and it would be over. As they neared the docking bays, Valira's communicator buzzed. A message flashed on the small screen. Valira, report immediately. Your absence has been noted. Investigation pending. Her blood ran cold. They were already looking for her. Connor saw the fear flash across her face. Keep going, he urged, his voice low and firm. Valira forced her legs to move, forced herself to breathe. They reached the outer docking rings, a wide open space lined with sleek ships, loading cranes and cargo containers. Valira scanned quickly. Most ships were locked down, but one, a small, battered courier vessel, was flashing. Green maintenance mode, no security active, perfect. She grabbed Connor's hand. There, she pointed. They ran, limping, stumbling, half falling, across the bay toward the ship. But as they reached the cargo ramp, a loud voice shouted behind them, "Stop!" Valira whirled around. 3 security officers were sprinting across the dock, weapons drawn, scanners buzzing. They had been spotted. Connor shoved Valira up the ramp first. "Go! Get the ship ready!" he shouted. Valira hesitated for one terrible second. Leave him behind? Never! She grabbed his arm and pulled him up with all her strength. Together they slammed the cargo door shut just as the officers reached it. Bullets hammered against the metal, but the ship's old armor held firm. Valira stumbled into the cockpit, heart racing wildly. Her hands flew over the controls. She had never piloted a human ship before, but basic flying was basic everywhere. The engines roared to life, coughing and sputtering like an old beast awakened from sleep. Outside, security teams shouted into radios, calling for backup. Time was running out. Connor dropped heavily into the co-pilot seat beside her. "Can you fly this thing?" he asked, grinning despite the danger. Valira shot him a wild, panicked look. "I'm about to find out." She slammed the throttle forward. The courier ship lurched, lifted, and shot out of the docking bay like a bullet. Alarms screamed across the station. Fighter ships scrambled after them, but the courier was small, fast, and Valira flew like her life depended on it. Because it did. Because his life did too. The blackness of space swallowed them. Stars blurred past as Valira twisted the ship into a wild, reckless path, dodging pursuit with skill she didn't know she possessed. Connor watched her with awe. She was beautiful in the pilot's chair, fierce, determined, shining. The ship's sensors beeped, enemies falling behind. Slowly, carefully, Valira eased back on the throttle. They drifted into a quiet sector hidden by a dense asteroid field. Only then, when the last alarm faded, did Valira let herself breathe. Her hands fell from the controls. She slumped back in her seat, trembling, with exhaustion and fear. Connor reached out and took her hand again, steady and sure. "You did it," he said softly. "We did it." Valira looked at him, tears filling her eyes. She had lost everything, her career, her home, her future on the station. But when she looked into Connor's eyes, she realized she had found something far greater. She had found someone who saw her, who chose her, who believed in her. She had found freedom, not the kind given by governments or councils, but the kind born from love. Days later, on a distant green planet orbiting a twin star, Valira and Connor stood together, hand in hand. They had found a small colony, a place where no one cared what species you were, only who you chose to be. Valira tilted her face up to the warm sun, feeling the soft breeze against her skin. Connor laughed beside her, pointing at a small shipyard where new adventures waited. A new life. A new beginning. Together. Valira smiled. A real, bright, fearless smile. She had crossed every line, broken every rule, and she had no regrets. Because in the end, love wasn't about obeying old traditions or following ancient fears. It was about choosing each other. Again and again. Across stars, across worlds, across every forbidden line,